Today, I want to talk about the aging warrior and facing your own mortality. Exactly what does the aging warrior do when he or she realizes they don't have the physical skills they once had when they were younger? Worse yet, what can you do when you are no longer viewed as formidable and instead you're often perceived as a potential victim? I'm going to start off this episode with a true story, and this happened approximately 2 weeks ago. Now, I had a doctor's appointment. It was nothing serious, just your typical checkup. And now the doctor's office is located on the 5th floor of this building. And usually I would take the stairs. It's something I always do. I always try to get in any bit of exercise whenever possible. But the day before was leg day at the gym, and my legs were obliterated. I mean, squats, hamstring curls, calf work, deadlifts. I even think my fingernails even hurt. So I decided to wait for the elevator. And standing in front of me was an elderly couple, a man and woman, and I wasn't paying much attention to them. We were both waiting for the elevator to come down from the top floor, so I was glancing at my phone. And then the elevator bell rang, the door opened, and I, glanced away from my phone. And as the elderly couple walked ahead of me, the woman, as she was walking in, completely collapsed, and she fell on the floor. I ran inside the elevator, to offer some assistance, and I think it was her son, because she referred to the gentleman as her son. He was trying to pick her up, but he was old himself, and he was trying to bend over and just pick her up on one side, and he couldn't even manage it. And she was mortified. She actually started crying. I don't think from the actual pain of the fall, but I think from the embarrassment. And it was just me in the elevator. So I ran up to her, and I told her I was going to lift her up, and I literally scooped her up by the under the arms, and she was light as a feather. I remember that now in hindsight, just how fragile and light she was. And she was back up on her feet. She seemed fine. I asked her if she was okay, and she was distressed, but she didn't seem to be in pain. The elevator door closed, and it went up to the 5th floor, because I actually hit the 5th floor button. But apparently they had no idea where they were going, and so I asked them which floor, and he asked her what floor, and she didn't even know. And they were very confused. So it went up to the 5th floor, and then I told them that I was going to send them back down to the lobby where they can go downstairs and look at the directory and figure it out. And that was it. I do remember how terrible I felt for her, and how vulnerable she was, and her son by all accounts. And it made me realize that these are people who actually were once in their prime. Approximately 45 minutes later, after the doctor's appointment, I walked to my car, and when I was in the parking lot, I just looked up, just a glance, and I saw the elderly couple from earlier walking away in the distance. And I stopped and I thought about that old woman, and how there must have been a time in her life when she was full of life. I imagined her as a young girl playing tag with her friends, full of energy and happiness, confident of herself in her environment. And, as the woman slowly ambled away, I saw the aging process play before my eyes, her aging process, from that young little girl to this elderly woman, and it really made me sad. Now, why was I so sad? I mean, after all, I didn't know her. She wasn't my mother or my sister or a friend. I think I realized that I was sad because it's a reality that all of us must eventually face. All of us must confront our mortality. We're all going to get old, and with that comes limitations that we'll never experience when we were younger. And I further speculated that this aging realization must be especially hard on physically oriented people such as athletes and warriors, accepting the fact that you're getting older and that you're eventually going to face your own mortality. You know, when I use the term warriors, I'm referring to just about any martial artist or someone who's involved in self-defense, law enforcement officers, military personnel, anybody who takes pride in the fact that they can protect themselves and their loved ones. We consider ourselves to be formidable fighters and skilled technicians, that can handle dangerous, and high-risk personal protection situations. Some of us will even dedicate our entire lives to mastering the art and science of personal protection. For many of us, we'll start out when we're young, and if we are committed, we'll continue studying and training throughout our lives. On the other hand, some of us will, start out training and then take a long break, and then come back to martial arts in our later years. Regardless of which route you take, the aging warrior will generally face two concerns. The first concern is losing the physical skills that will allow you to adequately protect yourself and your loved ones, meaning your speed, your power, your timing, and your endurance is significantly diminished. Or maybe you have incurred some sort of horrible injury during your life that now prevents you from adequately protecting yourself against someone who's younger, stronger, and faster than you. The second concern is what you're perceived as, meaning you're perceived as harmless to the bad guys. Once you were a person to be reckoned with, and people visually could pick that up, but now you fall into the category of a potential victim. This reminds me of a quote that I heard in the 2012 movie Act of Valor, where Agent Morales summed it up best when he said, "Before my father died, he said the worst thing about growing old was that other men stopped seeing you as dangerous. I've always remembered that, how being dangerous was sacred, a badge of honor." I'm sure there are many of you out there who can identify with this statement. This podcast episode is not just directed towards middle-aged or senior fighters or warriors who think that they're way past their prime. This actually should also be a concern for young men and women who are at their peak. Right now is what counts, because what you do now will have a tremendous impact on what you can and cannot do in your later years. Remember, these later years will be your most vulnerable years, and you'll need your martial arts or self-defense training the most during that time. When I meet a new student for the first time and they're about to start their training, they have to go through an enrollment process, and that requires them to fill out a registration form. And it's this typical registration form where they give information about where they live, why they want to study, what are their goals. But there's another page in the registration form that it's a medical history questionnaire, and it basically notifies me as their instructor of anything I need to be concerned about regarding their present condition. And it also allows me to talk about if they have any type of physical limitations and what have you. And many times when they fill out that medical history questionnaire, they always list some sort of previous injury from a past martial arts instructor or a past martial arts system that they studied. And I can't tell you how many times I have been told by new students that their hips are shot, their knees are bad, their shoulders are completely destroyed from the training they performed when they were younger. Now, I'm not here to point my finger at other martial arts instructors or self-defense systems. That's not the point. The point is how you train when you're younger is going to have a tremendous effect on how you'll be able to perform when you're older. Well, I have some good news for you. And the good news is it's never too late. It reminds me of the story of the late, great Jack Dempsey. Now, Jack Dempsey was legendary. He was the Manasseh Mauler, and he was an iconic human wrecking machine who reigned as the world heavyweight champion from 1919, I think, to 1926. But this story is not about Jack Dempsey when he was in his boxing prime. No. This is a story about Jack Dempsey when he was 70 years old, living in New York City, and was mugged by two guys. Now, there are many different variations to this story, but I think the most accurate one is described in the 1977 autobiography on Jack Dempsey. And apparently, the story states that Dempsey was riding home in a taxi one night, and the taxi stopped at a red light. And immediately, two young punks came running for the cab from both sides. They forced the door open and demanded money from Dempsey. And as you can imagine, Dempsey basically went into autopilot. He literally knocked out both guys on the right and then the other guy on the left. When Dempsey was interviewed after the altercation, he described both of his attackers as no more than 19 or 20 years of age. And then he said, these guys could have really benefited from boxing, because boxing would have helped them channel their hostility and aggression to something that's more productive other than trying to, rob people. So what's the takeaway from this is that you're never too old to be able to fight back. And if you train properly, you can maintain your fighting skills throughout your senior years. So the question is, what can you do now? What can you do now to make yourself formidable? What can you do to make yourself less of a victim? In my book, When Seconds Count, I often talk about the critical importance of self-awareness. Meaning, what aspects of yourself provoke violence and which, if any, would promote a proper reaction in defense of a threat of violence against you or a loved one. For example, what are your physical attributes? What are your strengths and weaknesses? Are you overweight or underweight? Is your body language and your manner in which you carry yourself more likely to provoke or deter a violent attack? Do you have any self-defense training in the past, or are you currently studying any type of self-defense or martial arts training? Are you fit? Are you out of shape? Do you have skills to be able to disarm a knife attacker or a gun-wielding opponent? What are your mental attributes? Meaning, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Are you optimistic or pessimistic? Can you summon up the courage and confidence even when you're feeling fearful or insecure? How do you handle stress? Do you panic or frighten easily? Do you have phobias? What are your fears? And do you think well when you're on your feet? Communication skills are also important. For example, what are your strengths and weaknesses in expressing yourself with words? Are you likely to aggravate or diffuse a hostile situation? Are your words congruent with your tone of voice? Can you communicate adequately under stressful situations? The key is, the better you know yourself, the better prepared you'll be if a situation arises. The next point is studying a reality-based self-defense or martial arts style. I've been doing this a very long time, and when I meet a student who has previous martial arts training, they usually always say to me that they're done with the recreational fighting styles, such as boxing, mixed martial arts, or esoteric martial arts systems. And now, as they're older, they want to focus on more pragmatic approaches to high-risk self-defense situations. And as a result, they find me or another self-defense style that's reality-based. And this certainly is not to say that recreational contact or combat sports aren't any good. They're actually really good. But when it comes to concerns related to defending yourself or a loved one, especially when you get up in years, you really want to look towards a reality-based combat system specifically designed for those concerns. But the key is that you have to be cautious when choosing a martial art or self-defense school. They don't all have the same objectives. First of all, you want to steer away from traditional martial arts studios. And I don't think I'm going to go into it because I've addressed this ad nauseum in all of my books and videos. You want to focus on a style or a system that's geared purely for reality-based self-defense scenarios. You also don't want to select a school because it's geographically appealing. Now, I know we live in a world where we are filled with stress and responsibilities and timelines, and it's always ideal to find a martial arts school or a reality-based self-defense school that's close to where you live. But the truth is, you don't want to let your laziness or your stressful lifestyle force you to sacrifice quality self-defense instruction. And also, you don't want to choose a school because of its aesthetics. Just because a certain studio has a juice bar or fancy equipment doesn't guarantee quality instruction. Ironically, some of the best self-defense training can be provided in garages, basements, school gymnasiums, parking lots, public parks, and college campuses. Remember that you're paying for the knowledge, not aesthetics. When and if you do decide to visit a school, be certain to watch a class and evaluate, what you see, and then make a decision. Ask yourself, is the environment conducive to learning? Does the instructor present the information in a logical manner? Is the material and subject matter easily understood? Is the class stimulating physically and intellectually? Are the training drills and the exercises practical and realistic? After the class, be bold. Go up to some of the students and, kind of interview them and ask them what they think of the course or the program. The third and final component of what you can do now is to practice and train smart. And this applies to, if you're young or if you're in if you're middle-aged or in your senior years. Remember when I discussed that health questionnaire and the stories of students who have these terrible injuries from previous training? And you have to understand that not just martial arts training, but any type of training could really set you back and also create limitations when you're older. And this applies to weight training and cardio training. Some people are proponents of CrossFit, while others just steer clear of it. You need to choose what works best for you and what promotes the least amount of risk for injury. Now for me, I've been following a program for decades, and it's simple. I lift, I do cardio, I stretch, and I study my contemporary fighting arts system. And I have to say, knock on wood, that I have yet to have an injury. If you still find yourself in a situation where you're unable to practice reality-based self-defense or some form of conditioning to better prepare yourself for a self-defense altercation, you can always look at augmenting your self-defense skills with tools, such as kubatons or walking sticks, tactical knives, and in some cases even firearms. But just remember the fallacy of dependency. If you're considering using any weapon for self-defense, beware of the common mistakes associated with your reliance on any particular weapon. Too many people assume that the mere possession of a self-defense weapon or tool will guarantee their safety, and this assumption forms the popular fallacy of dependency, which is the sole reliance on a particular weapon for self-defense. Now, no one's disputing that a gun, knife, or even self-defense spray will help you in a self-defense situation. However, you have to remember that no single weapon or self-defense technique, or security system for that matter, is the definitive answer by itself. Regardless of how you choose to prepare yourself for those advancing years, just remember that time is an unforgiving opponent that all of us will be forced to fight at some point in our lives. This has been The Truth with Sammy Franco. Please help spread the word and let other like-minded people know about this podcast. And if you'd like to learn more about me, please feel free to visit my website at sammyfranco.com or follow me on Twitter at Real Sammy Franco. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, take care.